everyone. Today let's talk about reflation and how this affects bond markets. So first of all, what is reflation? The purpose of reflation is to bring back the activity to its long-term average. Usually it takes place after a recession and it implies some forms of stimulus, fiscal and/or monetary. And because of this stimulus, inflation usually rises too, which is not very bond-friendly. So the word reflation is currently around every corner and markets are observing the Federal Reserve's communication, trying to assess both growth and inflation forecasts. And the higher this forecast, the more negative it is for bond yields, especially for the long end of the curve. So the reflation scenario hence explains why we recently had a correction in government yields and also why global bonds are suffering the worst start to a year since 2013. So one way to look at inflation forecast is through break-even points, and they have reached their highest level since 2014 at 226. So with no surprise, the US yield curve is bear steepening, which means that yields in longer maturity are rising quicker and stronger than the short ones. So we are globally to pre-COVID levels in terms of slope. And if we listen to some analysts, they will say that with the vaccination campaigns, the reopening of the economies, the fiscal stimulus, this is just the beginning and yields will rise further. So up to now, Mr. Powell doesn't seem too stressed by higher yields, but the risky assets like equities, emerging markets are showing some signs of stress. And it's a very difficult exercise for the Fed because any disappointment could accelerate the yield correction. Maybe you remember that before the pandemic, the 10-year Treasury yield was at 1.6%. By the end of February, and despite this bad start to the year, it only trades at 1.37. So does it mean that the 10-year Treasury should rise back to 1.6%? Well, according to consensus, by the year end, it should be at 1.48. But the consensus is very scattered, with the lowest forecast at 0.75% and the highest at 2.17. This last forecast looks a bit pessimistic, though, given the fact that inflation forecast might be too aggressive. Higher yield in the US could attract foreign investors, which is supportive, and the Fed is not ready to tighten its policy anytime soon. That being said, currently the reflation trade is rooting and yields are rising. So after having shown all its talents to fight the recession, the Fed will probably need to further use its talent to ensure that bond yields don't rise too brutally. Thank you.